So we're going to be moving out of death, although death is always with us, make no mistake. So take everything you learned last year and bring it on in. And this year we're going to be focusing on different aspects of power. And I think anyone interested really in any endeavor should kind of check out power and what it is and what happens with it, but certainly anyone interested in occult, religious, or kind of spiritual pursuits should check out power for sure. I mean, I could go down the list of how many gurus and priests and religions and churches have abused their power over individuals, but then we'd be here like all week. So it's important to get a little wrangle on it. And if we're going to try and have our own kind of relationship with whatever we think spirit is, we have to get a wrangle on what power is to us. And I think that can apply to anything you do, whether it's being a parent, having a job. The nice thing about all this stuff is it goes into everywhere. Drinking with friends, you guys think power comes into that? It does! Because someone will try and buy you a drink and you'll try and buy them a drink, and then someone doesn't want to receive and someone has to give, and then you get into the whole archetypal mess of it. So it happens everywhere. Can't escape it. And I'm certainly not trying to say that I don't have my own power issues. Everybody does. And I don't think there's a single person on the face of the earth that doesn't. And even Jesus Christ, the whole Bible is kind of riddled with his power struggles that he went through, and according to legends, vanquished and all that good stuff. So before we get into the more occulty and magically kind of ideas about power, I just wanted to start and kind of talk about how we kind of look at power in our country and in the West specifically, because power in America is like a big thing. It's a big stupid thing. We call ourselves a superpower. That's so retarded. We call ourselves, our own country, a superpower. That's ridiculous. Come on. It's like kids playing Superman, or something. And that kind of, the word superpower was first used in the 20s to describe a nation that had power. And then it grew because America and Russia were the two superpowers. No one else in the world had a superpower, but America and Russia were the superpowers because we had all the big boner bombs. So we're superpowers. I mean, if you kind of look at it like that, it just gets so funny to me. It's just really, really funny. And I looked up the word superpower, and it had a picture of President Reagan and Gorbachev, and they were sitting in these chairs, and they were looking at each other, laughing. And I was just that's so it. That's our retarded concept of what we think a superpower is. And it's so ironic because this whole nation was built, the people that started it were trying to fight and rail against the King of England and try to get rid of power and corruption and authority. And I just wanted to read just a couple quotes really quick. I'll have a couple of them, but a pretty good one is Thomas Jefferson. Even though he himself exerted power over his slaves, and then fathered children by him, came up with this nice little tidbit. He says, "Experience hath shown that even under the best forms of government, those entrusted with power have in time and by slow operations perverted it into tyranny." He knows because he knows. Yeah. Right? And then one of my favorite ones is an oldie but a goodie, which a lot of people don't know this source, but it's from a guy named John Dalberg Acton. And he said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men." That's kind of a big statement. And so I was just thinking about it a lot, and thinking about governments and presidents and power and stuff like that. And my good friend Jay Bennett was reading a book, and I can't remember the name of the book he was reading, but he had this realization. He said, you know, all these presidents lately that have been starting wars, none of them have ever fought in a war. They're all draft dodgers. And back in the day, do you know how like kings would fight wars? They would get out their swords and they would fight each other. The king would fight the other king. They wouldn't have the people fight the war. The king would show up and like be a man and have his power, his little sword, and he'd fight the other king, right? And so we have all these like the power issues. I think today are all these people that can really dish it out, but they can't take it. You know, these are people that could not, you know, imagine being involved in a battle, and so they are stripped of the empathy and sympathy involved in the power they're exerting, right? It's like a little kid that has a gun, because they've never had to like actually been shot in the leg or shoot somebody else. So that's like kind of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I was thinking about it too, with like a lot of these guys and women too, and people that find themselves in these positions of power, and how that gets flipped. And you see it so many times. Like, take a president, for example. What is this person who's placed in this like ultimate place of power, who does he exert his power upon? The submissive, the powerless. Do you see the presidents messing with other people with power? No, who are they picking on? The office aide, right? That's who they're like using their power to exert over. But who was the one that like topples President Clinton? The office aide, the one he was submitting. So you have this like person in the position of power, and then you have the submitted, and there, it's like we go back to the music thing, right? It's an octave. We go back to as above, so below, because the difference between the person in the position of power and the person they're submitting is like nothing. And you can flip it in a second. And what topples like the greatest kingdoms? Is it these other like powerful Mongols like a lot of times? No, it's usually like the slaves. How does Egypt end? The Jews come out of slavery, right? In the churches, who do the priests who have the most power, who do they exert their power over? Children. Children, right? Who are the ones that are bringing down the Catholic Church right now? The children that they exerted their power over. So this whole like idea of the superpower is so retarded, because they won't even like face the other powerful things in the world. They'll only exert it over someone they know they can beat. Right? It's like a grown man beating up a kid. And then one day that kid grows up and then he beats up the old man. And this is like the story of mythology, like going back as far as we can take it, right? You guys know the story of Saturn, right? For example, this is a good one. The story of Saturn is really, really epic. So he wants to overthrow his father and take over, like heaven and the earth and everything. So he castrates his father. You guys know this? He takes the, member, throws it in the ocean. You guys know this is how Venus is born, too. Venus is born from the castration. It comes out of the blood and froth of the sea. Love is born from this like very violent, hierarchical, usurping act, right? And then what Saturn does is, so that no one else can take his power away, which he took from his father, which you guys think if you take power, it can't get taken away from you? No. If you take power from something else, it's like holding a diamond, and all someone has to do is come and take that diamond right out of your hand, right? You can't keep it, you can't hold it. It's like sand, right? So he eats all his children to make sure none of them can like cut off his weenie, and one of them gets away. And then Jupiter comes and takes the power away from him. And you can see the Saturn, Uranus, Jupiter story in every country, in every family, in every community, is like it's funny. It's kind of funny. So when we're thinking about like power and how it operates and how we get it and how like our entire country gets it, how our families get it, how we get it in relationships, this is no small matter, right? And it's also important to remember this is not like a new thing. Like, so if you guys find yourself in the midst of a power struggle as they come and go, just remember, like, you're redoing this thing that has been done over and over and over again. But the important thing I always like to remember is in that Saturn story, what is the result of this power struggle that like frees everybody? It's Venus. It's love, right? Venus is born out of this power struggle, and she's what helps like keep it all together. So while we're discussing these issues of power, we're going to keep coming back to love. And I know it's kind of cheesy, but that's just how it goes in my lectures. Sorry. So I titled this whole series Occult Power. And it's not just because those words are really sexy and I knew a lot of people would come. But they are. Like, I'm sure you guys were like, what? Grabs your attention. Occult power is a specific kind of power that a lot of people mystify and put into the realm of taboo and don't like to look at it and think it's the devil and all those good things. But if we look at the words, the first word, occult, you guys know what the word occult means, right? Hidden or out of view. So something kind of secretive, something you can't see like right in front of your face. And again, where do we get the word occult? From the planet Venus. It's from Venus when she goes in front of the sun, the occultation of Venus. And you guys know the pattern that she makes that is a pentagram, right? Pentagram is not from the devil, from the planet Venus, which is love. Okay? It's also where the word occult comes from, Venus and love. And so the word power, this was very interesting. You guys know I go on my little word nerd searches. So power comes from a couple of places. Some people put it to French, which is poder, to be able or to do. Right? So when we have power, we can do it, right? We can do it. Like, we have the power, right? But in Sanskrit, it actually comes from the word potent, or master, or husband. Husband is power. Husband and power. Which is very interesting, because you guys remember from the familiar lecture, the word family. Family comes from fama, which is female servant. Or a female who is the slave, basically. And then I started going on this whole kick where I was like, you guys know where domination? I was like, okay, we're talking about power, so we got to talk about domination. Comes from dominion or domain or domicile, which is house. And the dominator is the lord of the house or the husband. Interesting, right? So here we can kind of see there's this pattern of like a masculine sense of like potency and power from the dominion of the male over the female slave that runs the house. And again, I always like to kind of get into, well, like, what would be the opposite of that, right? Because I'm not a big feminist, as most of you know, but these issues are within ourselves as well, right? We all go back and forth within the male-female fight inside of our own bodies. And so I was looking at what power means in yoga, right? So I looked up power in terms of like Indian yoga. And you know what power is in Sanskrit there? Shakti. You guys know Shakti? The big vagina. Shakti is divine feminine primal power. Power of creation and birth. Interesting, right? pretty different. Suddenly we're on the other end of the spectrum. But then the other thing that happens in India is that there is a counterpart to Shakti, which is Shiva. And a lot of people, maybe you went to Golden Bridge and you'll hear them say like Shiva Shakti, and it sounds pretty, you don't really know what it means. But Shiva Shakti is a very important thing, and they can't get pulled apart or separated. In Hindu and yogic tradition, they say if you separate Shiva and Shakti, the other one becomes a corpse. Shakti without Shiva is a corpse. Shiva without Shakti is a corpse. No power unless you have both, right? You need the Shiva and the Shakti to make, to do, to have it go. You don't have the other one, it's going to get out of balance, and then it's just going to kind of corrupt, right? And with that quote, like that power corrupts, I was thinking about that too. Like, why is that true? We see it all. Why? You got power, why does that mean you have to do the Saturn story? And then I was like, well, who has had power that didn't like do it, didn't get corrupted? Like, where along the lines does that happen? And there was like, nobody doesn't get it. I mean, even the most like religious leaders have to go through some form of corruption and then like kind of bounce back from it. And like then they get, reborn. And I always like to say, which is really important with this lecture, with Venus too, you guys know what corrupt is, right? It comes from coer, which is heart, and rupt, which is rupture. So it's broken-hearted, right? Power causes your heart to break. Power causes your heart to break. Can't take it. Can't hold it in your heart. It has to like give. And it's really weird because we inherently seem to want to have a person in power. Everyone will just give it to them, right? We'll all just be like, get the power, like do it, like lead, like go. We want you to do it for us. Will you please be power over me? That's like what, or we're the person that's like, give me your power, let me do it, I'll do it for you, I'll do it, right? And that's the whole like, we're penis for vagina, we're penis for vagina, it just goes back and forth and back and forth. We're either giving it or we're receiving it with power, right? And we just keep going back and forth, and everybody forgets that they have to have the power inside of them, right? Instead, it ends up like these balls that we just keep throwing around to everybody, right? And so the power ball just kind of moves place from person to person, and everyone goes looking for the person that has the power ball, and then they'll go hang out with them for a long time. But then as soon as the person drops the power ball, they're like, oh, I gotta go. Can't talk to you anymore, I don't have the power ball. And that, again, you can see that on every level of society, from family to cliques in high school, right? In LA especially, where do people try to get power? Status, Entourage. That's like the most famous show ever, Entourage. I was like, really? People love the idea of being able to hang out with somebody powerful. So good, because then you don't have to do anything, and then you have this powerful person. It's like having a pet tiger. Why do you need to have power? You got a pet tiger, right? Fuck, am I got a tiger? I'm friends with blah de blah. My niece knows blah de blah. This is how like the country gets run. Blah de blah does it all. And then that power ball that blah de blah has, eventually their heart can't hold it, so a little split gets put in the heart, and then their hand drops it. So it gets passed along to somebody else. And I was thinking about it a lot in terms of magic and the occult, because like it doesn't take a genius to go to like an occult group, and you can see a lot of them are pretty nerdy. No offense to everybody in here. am a total dork and nerd. I was talking earlier about how I loved the library club when I was a little kid. So I am no exception. Occult groups tend to be nerdy people, and sometimes they're trying to find, like, how do I get some power? And usually I think people are drawn to the occult that are nerdy because they're trying to find, like, okay, I don't got status, I don't know anybody with a power ball, how am I gonna, like, make some power happen here, right? Because they're smart, because we're nerds. So we figure it out. We're like, I don't have a power ball, don't have a tiger, so I gotta, like, make some. So we get our cauldrons, and then we start, like, cooking up some power, right? You guys are laughing because it's true. So then I looked up the word magic, right? So magic I've gone on so many, like, good word nerd trips with, and it's very frustrating. But this, I found a pretty good one. It defined magic as the art of influencing events and producing marvels, I like that word marvel, using hidden natural forces. Okay, so here we have the word hidden again, so now we're back to occult. Natural would mean it's existing on the earth, and then we have this word force come in. And force is such a stinker. In all my science escapades, trying to figure out what force means is like the most ridiculous magic at all. Okay, you know, as a kid, I would look at magnets, and I was like, this makes no sense. It's totally magical. And now I would do research in science and try and figure out, like, okay, well, what are these forces? They don't really know. They have a bunch of math equations to try and tell us what the forces are, but those get proved wrong all the time, even the electromagnetic ones. You guys know how they define magnets in science? It's so annoying. They say something that exerts force upon another thing.
Like everything?
Like everything, right? That's like the worst definition I've ever heard. It's such a cop-out. So,
he was right.
Yeah, I know. So I look up, and this was something I've delved into a lot before, so what are forces of nature? Like, everyone thinks of, like, force of nature. You guys think of, like, hurricane, or, like, earthquake, or, like, love. You know, those are forces of nature. But actually there are, like, we've come to a point where we've supposedly narrowed it down into 4. There's 4 forces, which I was like, 4 forces? Really? The word force has 4 in it, and there's 4 of them. Words are funny, okay? So there's 4 forces in nature. You guys know what they are? Nerds? We're all nerds.
Strong force, there's the weak force, magnetic force, and I think gravitation.
And gravity, exactly. Go nerds. So for you guys that didn't hear that, it's strong force, weak force, gravity, and electromagnetic. So if those are the forces of nature, the magician, the magic person, is the one that can influence these events and produce marvels from those 4 forces, right? That seems kind of crazy. Like, how can a person influence forces of nature? And yet, this is what all of the occult stories are about. Every story of a yogi, Jesus walking on water, that is a magician exerting a marvel over a force of nature. Every single religious story includes some person who has the ability to exert influence and marvel over these forces of nature. Going back all the way into our prehistory, this isn't something that, like, just starts at a certain point. This is with us forever. So for me, I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. We must have the ability to do this. Or why would there be so many stories? Why? It wouldn't make sense. And it was interesting too, because I was looking at magic, and the other origin of that is magi. You guys know what a magi is? They're a priest, like the 3 magi that bring Jesus, little baby Jesus, the frankincense and the myrrh and the gold. Those are priests. So then I look up priest, and priest, we get presbyter, like Presbyterian comes from that word too. Presbyter, not a very sexy word. Presbyter is an elder. This is an elder who has been chosen to perform sacrifice. That is so witchy. This is what priest means. Priest means an elder who was chosen to perform the sacrificial rites. Magician, same thing as magician, right? So there's a continuity here between religion and magician through the Magi. And the origin of magic is from the priestcraft, from the priesthood. So that's always important to remember too, and again, goes back to Jesus. So when we think of occult powers, like what's the first thing you guys think of? Like lightning bolts shooting out of fingers and like floating and like being able to do supernatural stuff, right? I mean, that's pretty much what everybody thinks about when they think about occult powers. I know that's what I think about, lightning coming out of my fingers. So one of my favorite examples of an occult power is levitation. Because everybody wants to fly, right? Because it's fun. And we can look at all the stories of like every like religious dude, and levitation is kind of like one of the first ones that they get. That's like the first occult power that we kind of see happen. Buddha does it, Jesus does it, tons of yogis in India do it. When Marco Polo went to India, he writes in his travelogues where he saw all these dudes levitating and stuff like that. So what is happening when you're levitating? Okay, so there's a fundamental force involved here. What is it? Gravity. One of the four fundamental forces. So here we see an occult power showing influence over one of the four forces, which is gravity. So, science nerds again, can we levitate things? Yes, we can. We can levitate a lot of things. If you guys have seen on BBC the Japanese levitating those mice over the sound speakers, which is so mean. The mouse is like, ah! And it has like a speaker. They use sound, which is another force and wave, electromagnetic, and they hover the mouse there. So what they're doing is they're actually using another force to negate the other force. And another big one that they do for levitation, one of my all-time favorite magical crazy science thing, superconductors. You guys know how those superconductors work? They have zero resistance. Oh, it just got so quiet. Now I don't have to yell. They have no resistance. That means they conduct electricity with nothing stopping them. It just goes through. So like, you guys know, if you like put electricity through certain things, it gets like stuck and then like explodes and makes a fire and stuff like that. Like if you put a lightning bolt in a tree, it just like combusts into flame. That's resistance. It's resistant to the electricity, so it goes into flame, right? So if we have resistance to gravity, are we going to levitate? No. We're going to have friction and we're going to walk, right? Because if we have resistance, that's what actually makes you be able to walk and like stand up and stuff, but you're not going to float, right? So what makes levitation possible is zero resistance. And just those two words in terms of power are so important, so I'm going to say them again. Zero resistance. Do you guys think you have zero resistance to anything? It's a pretty like hoity-toity thing to think about, right? Is there something that you think you could actually have zero resistance to? No, because you know why? Because you have a will and you want to exert your will over it. Like the tree pushing against the lightning bolt, You're going to resist because of your force of will, right? That's where resistance comes and prevents the flow, prevents it from flowing. Now, let's look at people getting struck by lightning. This is really weird. There's lots of people that get struck by lightning. Some of them die, some of them don't die. Some of them get burned into itty-bitty pieces, and some of them are like totally normal. After like hundreds of thousands of volts of electricity pass through their body. Why do you guys think that is? One person has less resistance than the other person, right? There's also grounding and all those kind of like electrical things. However, they have found that some people with even like rubber soles that should have been grounded would totally die getting hit by lightning. And other people that had no grounding at all survived the lightning. It doesn't make sense, right? And I talked about it a little bit in my spontaneous combustion lecture too, for those of you who were there. Like what would make some people do that and other people not? Resistance, pretty much, is really all I can come up with. But there was a dude in Griffith Park, which is right around the corner. This was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the known recording of someone who took the most amount of volts into their body. His name was Brian Ataza, and that was in Griffith Park. He took 230,000 volts through him. And he was totally good.
How'd they measure that?
I don't know. This is what the Guinness Book of World Records says.
When was that?
I don't know what the year is, but if you type in his name, it should come up. I think I got it on Wikipedia, so it's pretty easily available. It's a good source. Come on. But I know it's good. You gotta like look stuff up, but it's a good starting spot. So that's the thing. Like, how then would a magician say, who wants to go about manipulating or influencing? I like the word influencing better than manipulating, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A force of nature so that he cannot incur the force, but let it flow through him. And I mean, having Mars in Scorpio, certainly faced my share of power struggles. And it really wasn't until I started doing martial arts that I started to understand like the difference between power and force and flow. I know everybody's seen The Karate Kid, but we always forget how good it is, right? You guys forgot. And you can see it happen in front of you when you're fighting somebody, okay? And I'm a lady, you know, I weigh like 130 pounds. And I can fight someone that weighs, and I have fought someone that weighs about 250, 300 pounds. Some of those in grappling and jiu-jitsu, where the dude is like literally on top of you, and it seems like physically it should be impossible, right? For you to finagle out of there. But if you try to exert force and pressure on them, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to get pinned. That's actually what oppression means, because the meaning of the word oppression means to push against or thrust upon. You're weighing someone down, literally. So are you going to fight oppression by pushing back? By pushing it back? Well, if your oppressor is like 300 pounds and you weigh 130 pounds, is that going to work? No, so you got to get nerdy. This is where being nerds and occultists comes in handy. Right? You gotta figure out, oh, what if I like torque? What if I just like scooch, you know? And so a lot of it is like figuring out where is the power. It's coming from over you, right? So what are you gonna do if it's coming over you? And I always think of my girls like Dora the Explorer, you know? And there's this part where she comes up against a wall and she says to her monkey, she goes, what are we gonna do? We can't go through it Can't go around it. And so but it's such a good thing for when you come up against power struggle. She goes, we have to go over it, right? And that's what a superpower is, right? A superpower is really being able to go over a power oppression kind of thing that you meet up against. And so that's what like a real superpower is, not Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev going, ha ha ha. So you know what's crazy about like all the power dudes that get like in these positions and usurped by the like submitted person? What happens? They all have heart surgery. Their hearts break. Corruption. How many heart surgeries did Bill Clinton have? Like he had like a quadruple bypass surgery. Talk about broken heart. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who impregnates his nanny. Right? Who's Arnold Schwarzenegger having sex with? Not some powerful supermodel, his Mexican nanny. And he has how many heart surgeries? Gorbachev, heart surgery. These guys all like go into like heartbroken rupture. And it's also #1 killer in America, right? Heart disease. I mean, that's for lots of reasons, but power that corrupts, that's like messing with everybody's heart. And that's interesting too, because I found a pretty good quote from Jung about power. And this is, you know, my all-time fave, Mysterium Conjunctionis. It's just a little light reading, you know. So he says in here, he says, that is why we always find two main causes of psychic catastrophes. Which that's pretty good, psychic catastrophes. That's like a good band name. On the one hand, a disappointment in love. That's a psychic catastrophe. And on the other hand, a thwarting of the striving for power. Those are the two big ones. So we got love on one side, we got power on the other, right? Those are the two biggest psychic catastrophes, right? What the heck is going on with these people in their positions of power? What are they trying to get? They'll usually exert it in a sexual way over people, which is like, to me, when they do that, what are they? They're trying to like get love. It's really pretty sad. And then their hearts get broken from their power. I mean, and I don't think this is terrible because I think age difference really doesn't matter. I mean, love is love. But you'll see like the rich old dudes, and they use their money and status and position to get what? To get love. To try and like make someone love them because they can like pay for it. And that's not just old dudes and younger people. That's like all over the place, right? I mean, that dynamic is present across the board. And I think you can't really judge it. Like, you can't say it's wrong to try and like do that, because that's just kind of present, whatever. It goes back, it's Shiva Shakti, right? And you can't like really eliminate that. But then when you see this striving for power, trying to like get to that love through some kind of influence, what is that? You're trying to force it. And that's resistance. If you're trying to force something, it's like there's no flow. You're meeting resistance. Is that going to be a good way to be the occultist and like influence the forces of nature? No, you gotta go into the flow of them. You gotta like flow in the river. If you try to force it, you can do it for like a little while, but like castles made of sand, they fall in the sea eventually. So power will work. That's the thing that I think it's so mean, because it tricks people, because it works for like a minute. They're like, oh, I'm so powerful, I made you do this. I'm a superpower. But then it can only last for so long, and then, oh, the Powerball's dropped. Powerball went somewhere else. So what's the remedy to this situation, right? How do we get like the occult powers coming into play here to be able to use them? Well, how would you think that you could influence a force? How do you influence anything? Can you force someone to love you? No. What happens when you fall in love with someone? You strike a chord. There is sympathy. There is harmony. There is empathy. It's the same with the forces of nature. You can have sympathy with electricity. Sounds weird, right? But what are you made out of? Electricity. We're electromagnetic. We have our own kind of gravitational force, right? Atoms. Every atom has those strong forces, those weak forces, those electromagnetic forces. They're present in our entire, every little bitty part of our flesh, right? And every little bitty part of our flesh can love something, right? So we can have a harmony with it, a sympathy with it, okay? So how does the magician part the Red Seas? How does he make it rain? Does he force it? Does he put his hands up and go, "Rain, I command you to come"? No, if you read the stories of the shamans, they pretend they are rain. They become rain. And what do? They sing rain songs. They sing songs to come into harmony with it, right? A lot of people have this image of the occultist, and I think it's I can't judge what's right or wrong with anything, but a lot of people think to be a powerful musician, you have to invoke a force and command it, right? You gotta make the little circle, and you get the little demon, and you're in control of the little demon that's gonna go and rip out the heart of your enemy, right? Does that sound about right? What you guys think goes on? So you can conjure and invoke and command this thing. Oh, but what did you just do? You just gave a demon your power ball. Oh, you just handed it to him right there. And then that demon that you just invoked and had go tear out the person's heart, then he's like, "Oh, you want your power ball back?" I'm not going to give it back. I'm a demon. So, I think a lot of people, that's force. You're trying to use force to exert on other people. And a big tragedy that I'll see, and again, I think it's only out of ignorance, people will approach me in an endeavor to try and remedy a loss of love, which we go back to Jung and the psychic catastrophe. I deal with a few psychic catastrophes, and people will beseech me to, in my mind, use a psychic force to enter someone else's mind to find out what they're thinking. Right? Does my boyfriend love me? Can you use your occult powers to go into his mind and tell me, does my boyfriend love me? That is so sad to me. Right? It's the worst. I'm this is a psychic catastrophe. That is a psychic catastrophe. First of all, you should be able to feel if your boyfriend loves you. Second of all, you should ask your boyfriend. Third of all, if you have the power to go into people's minds, do you think it's cool to just kind of do that without people's permission? In yoga, I always like to go back to yoga because it's old. So this is a really good book. It's kind of hard to get through, but it's called Yoga, Immortality, and Freedom by Mircea Eliade. He's a Romanian dude that writes about yoga really well. I know, it's weird. He also got involved in a tantric cult and slept with his teacher's daughter. All kinds of power struggle issues. Bless you. Shiva Shakti, always Shiva Shakti. And in here he talks about the occult powers or superpowers are very famous in India. And they're called the Siddhis. And these Siddhis are, there's a bunch of them delineated in the Sutras of Patanjali. One of my favorite translations of the Sutras of Patanjali is How to Know God. The Siddhis, or superpowers you can get through yoga, include, there's quite a few of them, but levitation, one of them. Going into other people's minds, entering other people's consciousness, that's another one. Being able to become as small as an atom, right? Like basically all the powers that you see in the comic books. Really, it's true. Are included in the Siddhis. So do you guys know how to attain these Siddhis? You concentrate on the thing and you make yourself like the thing. And that's how you get the Siddhi. Sympathy, empathy, flow, zero resistance, right? You can enter anyone else's mind because you know why? Because you are them. Everyone is the same. So you want to go in someone else's mind, you go into your mind, right? But do you guys think it's easy to go into your own mind? That's like pretty tricky. Do we have zero resistance to going into our own mind? No. So that's why it's a superpower. You have to work really hard at it. It's not easy. They call it samyana, to get into samadhi, which basically means you got to sit there and meditate for a really long time. And think about the thing you're thinking about to try to get the influence of the thing. And this I can explain very easily. Okay, you guys ever been obsessive about a relationship? So how often do you think about the person, right? You're thinking about the person, you're sitting there in bed, and your little gerbil is going around the wheel, and you're like, the person, and then all of a sudden you are the person. And then you project that onto them, and then you get the Shiva Shakti thing, and then it's like the shadow, and it's all projection, because you have thought about that person so much that you have like kind of become them. And this happens with your enemies too, P.S. There's someone you think about like a lot, and you're like, oh my God, I hate them, 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 I hate them. You're doing yoga. You're totally yogaing out and becoming your enemy. Because if that's how you attain a superpower, you don't think it works for if you think about money, 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 money. You're becoming money. So, how do we get zero resistance and attain superpowers? You have to become the thing so that you don't have resistance. If you imagine yourself as a lightning bolt, that's kind of fun. You guys seem like think about, I am a lightning bolt. You would have a much better chance, I think, of a lightning bolt just passing right through you, right? And you can see this happen in other ways. Like, okay, let's say you're trying to forgive someone. What's a good way to lessen the resistance? You think, okay, what if I was him? Or what if I was her? You become the thing, and then suddenly empathy can grow. Because you're like, oh, that's what they're doing. But power comes when we try to not sympathize. We're trying to exert our will onto somebody, like make it go. Like me gonna do this on you, and you are gonna take it, right? Is there sympathy involved with that? Is there empathy? Is there empathy in the president who has never fought a war and then puts that onto somebody else? That's why the good magician and the good sorceress or even the good voodoo doctor would never do anything to anyone else that they wouldn't do onto themselves. And that's like, I think, where that kind of adage comes from. If you think it's cool to like exert power over people, you need to like, is that something that you would do? Like if someone's trying to force you to love them, how do you feel? Like is it cool to you if someone tries to like force you to love them? Or do your laundry? How does that make you feel, right? I hate doing other people's laundry. So it's really very simple when we think about occult powers and how to have influence over force. Influence is how you can change something by just being sympathetic. You guys know the 4 fundamental forces? They're called non-contact forces. Non-contact forces. That's such a like big brain thing to put in there. And that's like magnets, right? You can push a magnet against metal from like pretty far away. It's Depending on how strong the magnet is, maybe a little further. You don't even have to touch something to influence it. You don't have to touch something to influence it. You can be Justin Bieber off in Colorado, and your song can be on the radio thousands of miles away, and you're having influence over this teenage girl. You think occult forces are any different? It's totally like Justin Bieber. What's the difference? How do you think Justin Bieber is exerting that influence? It's the same thing. And he's using what? Okay, this is good, this is good. What's he using? Electromagnetic force. He's such a magician. Right? So magic style.
He may be the hand puppet of another magician.
Probably. There's usually like more, he's probably got to bow to some power tripper. I'm sure like it's complicated. Matter if you think of the most powerful people, you think they don't have to deal with this too? Like I said, people they're exerting the power over, they're tied to. Like if Justin Bieber gets mauled by his fans. It's like that. Right? You think you can exert power over something and like be free and clear of it? You think you got a pet tiger and you don't have to deal with the tiger yourself? What happens when the tiger's done messing up your friend? It's gonna turn around and be like, oh, you don't have a power ball, it'll just mess you up too. That's the problem with thinking you can take power from outside yourself, right? If you think you can manipulate power from some source, you can like grab it like a tiger, that tiger is going to eat you up. If you think that power can be a tiger inside you, now you're like kind of heading in a better direction, right? And what is that power, the tiger inside that will hold influence? Affinity, love. That's how it goes through influence. That's how sympathy operates. Venus born out of Uranus's penis. It's funny because it's true. But that's it. That's the whole story right there. And that's how it goes. And you guys know, I love to say this, like in the etymology of the word love, you know, its origin, right? Part of it comes from Freya and the freedom. Freedom. How do we get out of oppression? How do we get out of corruption? What is the concept there? Freedom. Where does freedom come from? Love. Love. Only antidote to power. Right? And again, this is, we all go through the circle over and over and over and over, and we can't really get out of it. So all we can kind of do is think like, how can we invoke a force not by command or by exertion, but through love and influence? And you guys all saw the movie Babe, right? Babe, Babe? Mm-hmm. It's a perfect example, okay? The dogs make the sheep go by barking, by threat, by punishment. You do this or I'm going to bite you. And the sheep are like, we hate the dogs, stupid dogs. We'll kill that dog if we get a chance. And Babe comes up and he's like, hey guys, how's it going? And he's friends with them and he loves them. And then they just do whatever he wants. And as a parent, like you can see this too, in the way so many people parent their children. What are you going to do when your kid doesn't listen to you? Are you going to go, I'm going to give you a spanking. You're going to listen to me. I don't care. What do you think your kid's going to do? I hate my mom. Any chance I get, I'm going to get away from her. I'm going to run away from home and be a prostitute when I'm 16. Or how about if we do it, it's an old story. Right? I'm not making this up. How about if we try to exert influence over children through love? Then something very special happens. Empowerment. Right? It comes from inside. And that really, don't be mistaken if you think you can give someone power. Because like I said, it's going to be the power ball. And power balls get dropped and passed around and given anywhere. The only true empowerment is when, through example, through sympathy, you can spark in someone to have power grow within themselves. Do you think by giving someone a position or being their friend, you can give them power? A lot of people really kind of think that. You know, oh, I'll give you this magic feather, Dumbo, and now you can fly. Does Dumbo fly because of the magic feather? No. It's of his own volition. Anyone can hand you the most powerful thing in the world. Anyone can hand someone a gun. Anyone can hand someone whatever to try and like exert power over someone else. But you know what? If you have internal power, you know, you can do kung fu and figure out how to get around the gun and get around the weapon, right? And then suddenly, it doesn't mean anything because you got the tiger on the inside, right? Tiger on the inside. But there's, sadly, in America, especially in our government system, not a lot of people with the tigers on the inside. So we have a lot of people getting their hearts broken and breaking other people's hearts through corruption, right? And this is the thing, like in yoga, this is a good way to like close it out. The Siddhis, the magic powers, there's a couple ways you can get them, right? You can concentrate on them, you can focus on them, like try and get them going. And there's some people that just do that. They're like, I want the magic power, so I'm going to meditate on magic power. But you know how else they come? If you are meditating on God, on the overforce, on the superpower, those come as like an accident. If you are the ascetic, if you're trying to get to a higher place, the magical powers just kind of like show up, right, along the road. But there's two different kinds of like yogis in India. There's the ones that want the magic power because they want to be invisible and like sneak into the chick's room. And then there's like the yogi, that's true, that actually happened with Nagarjuna, who took Buddhism to Tibet. And that's who like the Dalai Lama follows. It's a pretty funny story. I know. All these little things get left out. Or there is the yogi who is trying to get to where he's going, and you know what happens then? The superpowers become like these like terrible things that like drag them off their path. It's like the rock stars that maybe are like married and have families, and then all the groupies. So the superpower is like the groupie to the rock star that's like, oh, I'm so pretty, I'll just do whatever you want. And then his wife is like at home, like crying. And the yogi is the same, right? They're like, oh, I'm so powerful, I can walk on water. And so like that temptation brings them all these groupies, right? And you see this with like every guru, maybe not everyone, but I haven't really heard of one that didn't do it. Every guru will get like maybe some superpower or accumulation of power, status, and then they get the groupies, right? And then, oh no, their hearts get broken and corruption sneaks in, right? Because they're going looking for love that's just given to them. But you know what? In the yoga stories, the gods get freaked out if there's a yogi that doesn't submit to the superpower lure. If there's a yogi that doesn't give in to the groupie, they all like get really nervous and they're like, we gotta send in more guys. Like, quick, who else have we got? Like, who's got the biggest boobs we can send in there? And they do, like, in the Vedas, this is a story that is told. So a yogi reaches, like, a certain thing, and then they just pour it on really thick. And this is told of Jesus, too. Like, you know, when Jesus goes into the desert, the devil just, like, goes nuts and tries everything he can to, like, see, like, oh, he's getting too close, he's getting too good, he's gonna be like a god man. I have to do something about this. Same with Buddha. What happens with Buddha under the Bodhi tree? You know what happens? All these pretty ladies come to him and try and trick him and having sex with him. It's true, right? Trying to like mess him up. So he can't be God-man. So if you think that these occult powers are the goal, that's what you're trying to do? You guys really think that's like what's cool, to get the occult, to be able to levitate so that you can like just levitate? I mean, that's pretty cool, but what about what's making that possible? Oh, there's something even super-er than the superpowers, right? So, I just made that up. So what is the thing is like above that, there is something else. And that's where like the Jesus style goes, right? To get beyond the ability to just do miracles, right? I mean, miracles are pretty great, but oh, there's something like crazy making these miracles happen. What is that? I want that. But you get so like lured in by all these power struggles that even when you start like getting pretty good, like the guru, right? It's getting pretty good. He's getting like pretty holy. And then he's like, I'm more holy than you. And then, oh, I just saw a slit go in your heart, right? You can see it happening in front of your eyes, and you can see it happen when you do it too. Next time, I know you guys are going to be bummed that I'm putting this in your head, but you're going to find yourself, next time you do it, you're going to go, oh, I just power tripped on somebody. You're going to see it next time you do it. And just remember, the antidote is LOVE, so you can fix it, right? We can sew up the little slits that we make in ourselves through love, through sympathy, through singing, right? And that's how we can kind of like put it back into balance. Because we can't really make it the whole life without ever doing a power thing. I mean, from the get-go, you start with your parents. And then you just hit the ground running. Resistance starts building kind of from the start. Depending on who your parents are, you can have it easier or worse or whatever. They can put religion on you, and then that's going to make more resistance. Right? We have this problem with getting to zero resistance kind of from the start. So don't worry about it. Just know that you just become conscious of it, and to counter it, you just keep putting the love in there. That's all we can really do. And that's, I think, how, we can solve it on every level, like from the family to the government to the countries to everything. Like, if we just keep hanging around these power balls and passing them around, we're really not going to get anywhere. But when you can renounce the power and just use love, then you're on some Jesus business. Right? So just practice it a little and see how it goes. And send me a report. So that's all I have for today. Thanks, you guys.